Crowd's Fault fans, this is Dan Danzy right here with Texas wrestling legend Khris Germany right here, about to do a new episode of Crowd's Fault, wrestling themed over the big WWE healthcare scandal. Texas wrestling Khris legend, cut a promo on him.
You know I don't do that anymore.
You don't?
No.
You don't do this anymore?
I'm doing stand-up.
We paid you $100 to do this. You made us mail you the check, which I don't even understand. You could have just picked up cash right here, but we mailed it to you.
All right, you want me to go into wrestling mode?
Yes.
You got it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been another week, which means it's another episode of Crowd's Fault. We've got a good one right here. It's been a crazy weekend in the world of professional wrestling. It started out last week when Jon Olivers put out basically a 20-minute video editorial on his show last week tonight, explaining the holes in wrestling. Now, Jake, you know I'm a very passionate wrestling fan over 20 years.
Yeah, your dick gets hard for it, I know.
Jake is sometimes annoyed by my love of wrestling. He definitely was annoyed the fact that I wanted to do an episode on this.
No, I wasn't.
No, okay, good.
I just thought you were going to try pinning me down.
No, well, I was, but now the surprise is gone. But I wanted to comment on the situation because this was right before Wrestlemania, the biggest wrestling event of the year, and even non-wrestling fans launched to this Jon Olivers editorial. You saw it. You're not that big of a wrestling fan. What did you think of it?
It was good. So I'd like to preface, I'm an Attitude Era wrestling fan.
Oh, yeah.
80s wrestling fan. Like, I love Macho Man and all that shit. But as for what Jon Olivers had to say about the wrestlers not getting paid what they need to, not getting pensions or whatever, anything else, they should be treated like NFL stars if they're going to be paid. Like, Vince McMahon's making that much money on that level.
Yeah.
And these people are paying to see these names, but they're supposed to be independent contractors, but they can't get work somewhere else. It doesn't make sense.
And I wanted you and I to talk about it, but I felt like, well, you and I talking about it, what's it gonna do? Plus, we're just fans at this point. I mean, you're Attitude Era 80s. Yeah. I'm current. I still watch at 31. It's not embarrassing.
No,
it's real to me. Damn it.
I got plenty of friends that still watch wrestling. It's awesome.
It is an awesome thing. But I want to do one better. Now, doing stand-up comedy, you meet people from all necks of the woods, and we just so happen to meet, I think, just the crown jewel of what we need for this episode. Texas wrestling legend and someone who's been in the WWF, WWE, whatever you want to call it, locker room, Khris Germany. Khris, go ahead, say hello. Promote your Twitter and Instagram first.
So it's Khris Germany. You can find me on Twitter at Germany Khris, and Khris is spelled Khris.
There you go.
So you guys come find me on Twitter. On Instagram, I'm Khris Germany, Khris. Germany like the country. So come find me, follow me. I'd appreciate it.
Definitely do this, people.
Yes.
Yeah, he's on the rise as an up and coming stand-up comic.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that too. But first, give them your background, your resume. You were in the professional wrestling industry. Go ahead, tell the audience what you did for that business.
So to give you a little backstory on me, I grew up here in the Dallas area. I grew up in Irving, Texas, and got into the pro wrestling industry in 1989. I started training with gentleman Chris Adams here at the Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas, right there on Katie's and Industrial. Now I believe it's Riverside Drive or something in Katie's, but the Sportatorium's not there anymore, unfortunately. They tore it down several years back. I grew up in Irving, played football at Irving High School, got a partial scholarship, played some football at Trinity Valley in East Texas. That lasted a semester. I have to say I was asked to leave, but anyway, I left.
I've been asked to leave many places. It's really not that big of a deal.
I guess too much time in the girls' dorm room, I guess. So, but I played football there. Went to Trinity Valley on a football and musical arts scholarship. I was an all-state baritone in Trinity Valley. And right before I knew I was leaving.
Yeah.
I just didn't have the chops for college football, but I was a pretty decent athlete.
Yeah.
And mentioning it, one of my friends said, "What are you going to do when you leave college?" I was just joking around. I said, "I'm going to go become a pro wrestler."
Yeah.
So my friend was the editor of the paper there in Trinity Valley and said, "Can I do an article on that?" So she did a whole
Have you even been in the ring yet?
No, hell no.
So she was just like,
I was
someone who wants
bullshit.
to be a wrestler. I'm just going to do a story.
I was just saying bullshit trying to get laid.
Yeah.
So
Now you're in the
yeah,
paper.
no, man. So she did a complete total article. I'm talking 2-page article on it.
Did you end up sleeping
I
with
was
her?
gonna say.
No.
I was like, damn.
No, I was trying to get laid from the other chick.
I love how I asked for your wrestling background, and the first story is about how you almost got laid.
I'm trying to get laid. So she did a complete article with pictures and everything. Somewhere I got clippings, and people could probably look it up. I don't know. But after that, she wrote the article. I thought, well, you know what? I really might have to do something about this. So I'd heard through the grapevine. I did some construction and a couple other odd jobs, and then started working at a gym, Physique's Gym, downtown Irving.
It's always a gym. Anytime I'm watching interviews with wrestlers,
Yeah.
and they ask how you got into wrestling, it always starts out with a gym. And wait, and this might not be your case, but let me guess, Hulk Hogan saw you, because it's always Hulk Hogan saw me.
Right.
And was just like, I'd like to beat you one day, brother.
Good physique. No, we actually did have some national wrestlers come in when they came through Texas, but, I wasn't going to say anything. Those guys were outstanding athletes. I wasn't going to, flap my jaw to them, but some of the local wrestlers would come in, and I started creating a relationship with them. And they gave me a little bit of insight. And then I saw that Chris Adams was actually in the process of doing, a wrestling school there at the Sportatorium. And his very first student that came out was a guy named Steve Williams that ended up being Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, God, I gotta go try this out.
I feel like we got lucky as a sit-in. Like this, I love Micah, but this is like 10 times better than.
Yeah, totally won.
So I went and paid like $250 for a weekend tryout.
Yeah.
It was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And they gave you, they were trying to sell you on coming to the wrestling school.
Oh, yeah.
And, he's making shit tons of money off of it. And so I went out and tried out, and I was a little bit of a natural. I mean, I've been a wrestling fan for my entire life. My grandmother, on my father's side was an unbelievable wrestling fan. And so it was always on the TV at her house.
Yeah.
So when my parents were, back in the 70s, when my parents were going out dancing and drinking and having a good time, and I was staying over in my mama's house, wrestling was always on TV.
Yeah.
But it was old-time wrestling. I'm talking, where when
Like Lou Thez.
Yeah,
and,
like when Fritz von Erich was still
George the Animal.
Yeah.
Fritz, well, this was
before.
like
Way
this is
before
when it
that.
was still territories.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like all you got was local wrestling. You had rabbit ears, and
Right.
if it was raining, somebody had to go and hold those rabbit ears so you could get better reception. So, I'd always known it, but then in the early '80s, the whole Von Erich thing happened.
Yeah.
And I got hooked. When the Freebirds came in and, they had the big feud in the 80s, I mean, I was hooked. And so at that time, I really became a really true wrestling fan. And at the time, that's all I really wanted to do is be a Texas wrestler.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a Texas wrestler, man. That was my home. Dallas is my home. And
It's the
That's
same thing
awesome.
with comedy. For like, what really intrigued me about Texas comedy was like, I wanted to be a Texas comic because they're so.
Pride where you come from, man.
I think it is.
I love
but
Texas.
everything else, sports, whatever. But like
Well,
when
not
it
even
comes
that,
to
like whenever I know a celebrity is from Texas, I take pride in
Yeah,
them
it's
as a
a big deal.
celebrity.
you take pride,
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
There's
They
a
come from
weird,
my home.
but it's
Like,
also with
yeah.
entertaining. It's very,
Yeah.
it's very
all
weird.
facets,
Yeah.
man. Music, wrestling, sports,
And
movies.
I think it's because of the lineage. I mean, in Texas wrestling, you mentioned Steve Williams, who's Steve Austin, but you also have Shawn Michaels, who you've been in the ring with.
right.
And then in comedy, you have Bill Hicks, you have Ralphie May, and then there's that lineage of these great.
Don't forget St. Kennison.
And Kennison. And Sam, I'm sorry, shit, I should just shut the show down right now.
Right?
But yeah, but it's mentioned just the Texas wrestler. But I relate to that because when I started off in comedy, I was like, I don't want to be a big famous comic.
HBK.
I want to be a Texas comic. So, but like we said, you ended up in the ring with Shawn Michaels. This was after the Rockers gimmick. He super kicked Jannetty, the big heel turn.
Yeah, the split.
How did you end up in that match? So you went from Sportatorium. I assume you worked yourself up in the Sportatorium.
Yes, trained at the Sportatorium. Ended up doing jobs for the big guys at the Sportatorium. My first TV match was they actually tried to take care of me. Tagged me with Billy Joe Travis, who was a guy from Tennessee.
Okay.
And real popular. And they tagged me with him, and we wrestled Sweet Daddy Falcone and Brickhouse Brown.
Oh,
and that was,
damn.
And that was my first television match.
Yeah.
They actually, they wanted to make a big deal out of it.
I'm sorry, what year was this?
This was 1990.
Okay.
1990.
So I started training in '89 and got in the ring early '90.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was my first TV match. And what they were trying to do is just kind of give me some sort of a push so that when I started doing jobs, at least the people had some sort of emotional attachment to me.
Right.
Teaming me with somebody who was really popular. And of course, I did the job, but afterwards, Billy held my hand up, and the crowd cheered. And from that point on, like, they knew who I was.
Yeah.
Even
Awesome.
if I was doing jobs, they were going to try and cheer for me.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So, did jobs there, and then it was really world class when I started. And then shortly after that, it went to USWA. Jerry Jarrett, and who's Jeff Jarrett's father,
Yes.
a huge promoter from Tennessee.
Original owner of TNA.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was great just, spending time with guys like that. That
Yeah,
had
yeah.
such gravitas and, just knew the business inside
Right.
and out. And just keeping your mouth shut in the locker room and just watching.
Legacies.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And, I was lucky enough in Dallas to wrestle guys like Chris Adams, like
Nice.
Kevin Von Erich, gorgeous Gary Young, some of the really big names that were here in the area. Mick Foley, who was Cactus Jack at the time. And,
I'm a Dude Love fan, personally.
Okay, yeah, all right. So I'll tell you a little story about that.
I love Mankind because
Oh,
it's Mick Foley doing the Hell in a Cell stint
yeah.
where he
Fuck
took
yeah.
the bump. But you just love Mick Foley. Love Mick Foley.
And so somewhere around 92, the business had taken a huge dip, and Jerry had packed up and gone back to Tennessee.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to keep the wrestling business alive around here, and we wrestled where we could. We wrestled at a couple small venues, but kept it going, like weekly shows to keep the fans involved.
Yeah.
Nothing was televised, but the same fans, when they hear about it, they're going to come out and see it.
Yeah.
And so one of the wrestlers who was wrestling at the time in USWA, and then what became Global Wrestling Federation here in Dallas, said, hey, WWF is called. They're doing a full tour here in Texas, and they want me to pick out 8 of my best guys that I think can really do a great job on TV and put the guys over and can bump good and don't mind doing the job on TV. And so I was one of those guys. And first show was in Lubbock, Texas. I'm almost positive it was Lubbock. And came in, Tony Gurria came around and, had us all fill out, paperwork. And I got chose to wrestle Shawn Michaels.
Awesome.
And it was Shawn Michaels' first match as the Heartbreak Kid with the Heartbreak Kid gimmick.
It's important that this
Yeah.
gimmick is sold well.
Right.
Not just by Sean, but by the
Well,
opponent.
this is going to carry his career.
Yeah. If he doesn't sell any of Sean's moves, the Heartbreak Kid
Right,
gimmick
it's
doesn't
nothing.
exist.
Yeah.
And he was managed by Sherry Martel.
Yeah.
So the whole gimmick, getting in the ring, holding the mirror up, taking the earrings off, taking the jacket. I mean, it was his first time doing it. I'm sure he probably talked it over with agents before, but we literally stood around for probably half an hour because he didn't even know what his finishing move was going to be.
Wow. I didn't know that story.
And so, if I remember correctly, it was Blackjack Lanza that came over, was the agent for that match, and came over and gave us a suggestion for a finish, which was this weird side suplex.
Yeah.
That Shawn Michaels, I don't think, had ever done in any matches.
Yeah.
But they were just trying to come up with a finish.
No, it's a really weird match because when I met you at Hyenas Dallas, because he's doing stand up now, I googled your name. I was like, oh, that's him. And I watched the match. It's been years since I've seen it. But the Sweet Chin music happens in the match, like middle of the match. It's not the finish.
It's a setup.
It's the setup for the finish. He even does the elbow. That's not the finish. And yeah, the finish is the side suplex.
Yeah.
Where it's just basically like,
Yeah.
like you're just putting.
It was more of a. He got down real low, grabbed my leg, and almost did like a sidewalk slam.
Yeah.
But it was a side suplex.
It looked really weird. It looked really weird, but it didn't look like it had like a huge impact.
Right.
But I guess fans back in the day were just like, "Whoa, but whatever, he's a bad guy," you know.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming they chose me because Sean and I are probably about the same height.
Yeah.
I'm about 6'2". I think Sean's 6'1". And but I outweighed him by about 30
You did
pounds.
outweigh him, and it made him look like
just really great. And he was terrific. Was really, kind, and he was getting his first big push, and I know he was excited about it. But he took care of me, did a great job, and I think I did a good job putting him over.
Now I want to ask you a question that relates, because now we know, like, this guy is legit.
Yeah,
his opinion's legit.
definitely.
If you want to argue in the comment section,
Yeah.
you're a crazy person. So I'm going to ask you one question referring to Jon Olivers' segment. Was there ever a time, though, like in these where you were scared to like get hurt? Even working in the Shawn Michaels match with WWF, were the programs that Jon Oliver were talking about, were those in play then? I should rephrase the question, not be scared or whatever. But were those programs in play, the independent contractor?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen, when I got in the business in '89, the reason that guys in the '70s and even from the '50s were independent contractors is because you didn't know when your program was going to be over with, and you needed to go to another territory and get business. And usually you could call some territories and see if they need, if you're a babyface or if you're a heel. If you were a draw, there was usually another territory that was interested in it.
Right.
But if you were a heel and finishing up a blow-off match for a program, then usually you go to the promoter at the time, whether it was Fritz or Jerry or somebody else, and go, I'm not really sure where I'm going next. Can you make a couple phone calls with me? Because they were all
I was gonna say,
involved.
I didn't know if y'all got references from the territories that you're in to give to the other territories. Like, hey, do you want to see this kid? He wants to come
by
through
the
there.
time the blow off would happen, and I'm thinking from a heel perspective, but usually when a blow off happened, or if it was a loser leave town match or whatever, they would usually make arrangements, because if you were a draw in a territory, they already knew they wanted to bring you back.
Yeah.
Right.
So they wanted to get rid of you for a little while because, the old adage is,
Anticipation.
they can't miss you if you don't go away.
Yeah.
I mean, they just can't. So they would, set up something, and you'd go away for 3 months, and then bring you back with a bigger push.
Yeah.
And then be a bigger draw. It was a little bit more difficult here in Dallas because the draws were the Von Erichs, and Daddy was running the show, and nobody he didn't want anybody to be bigger than the boys.
Oh, right.
But at the time,
Making that Pizza Inn money at the time.
So at the time, really, healthcare at this point, or just taking care of wrestlers that get hurt on the job, No, but it's expensive at this point. Like, if every territory was doing that, they would have just they wouldn't have lasted as long as they did.
If you really got hurt and the promoter liked you, he would throw you a little bit of extra money. But or if you got seriously hurt, usually he would throw you a little bit of money to get you through that point. But most of the time it was just spit on it and get to the next town.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say you fight if you're hurt regardless. Right.
Yeah. You're just. Like it's either that or lose your spot.
Yeah. Which is
It was like football players back in the 70s. And
Really in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah,
you know?
Now, do you think now are you one of these people or one of these I should say ex wrestlers that thinks that the people today should suck it up, or do you think that, man, you know what, it made $900 million last year, you're the only game in town really at this point?
Well, all right, here's my opinion.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So
For those of you who can't see, I'm rubbing my hands together.
you got to remember back in the olden days, there was always somewhere else to go to get work. Now there's not. And on a big show like a Texas Stadium show, like the memorials that they would put on for David Von Erich, you know, Fritz might draw in, I don't know, $3 million off a show like that.
Yeah.
But not $900 million.
yeah.
That's a whole different monkey.
Well, I mean, the reach of the WWE now, I mean, it spans.
I mean,
the
they're
globe.
doing
It spans
global.
the- Yeah, exactly.
They're doing
It spans
global
the globe.
territories.
So I mean, it's unfathomable.
So I got to say, I'm kind of with Jon Oliver when it comes to that. Like even in the late '90s when I got my big push, working, and I was still doing stuff for WWE when they would roll into town. When they would come into town, they would call and they would say, "Hey, we're going to do Oklahoma City, Dallas, Wichita Falls."
So you're not in
Antonio.
an exclusive contract with them?
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
No,
okay.
we were day players, but you know we would usually go in and do like a 5-day stint with them and hit all the territories in Texas and Oklahoma or
Pretty
Texas
much the
and
wrestling
Louisiana.
definition of the independent contractor
Right.
without the exclusivity
Fucking
clause.
nomads.
Yeah.
And and it was good for it's always good for the top guys
Yeah.
because everybody makes their own contract.
Right.
They'll pay what they think you're worth.
Yeah, the Undertaker doesn't need health care.
No,
You know what I mean?
no, Hogan never did.
Hogan never did.
But
Paul Bearer did. He needed it.
but even
Jesus, calm it down, Jake. Have some respect.
But even the middle card
For old
guys,
Percy Prig.
they're not getting a huge cut of those territories. The way they used to break it down was a third, a third, and a third.
Yeah.
So a third would go to the company, a third would go to the owner and promoter, and a third would go to the boys.
Yeah.
So basically, that first third was to cover expenses. With a little bit of profit left over, and we're not talking merchandise. We're just talking about
Ring repairs and stuff
gate.
like that.
Yeah, gate. Whatever it costs to put the show on.
Yeah.
Second one, because used to the owner wasn't always a promoter, so a third would go to the promoter and the owner, and then a third would be divided amongst the boys where they were on the card. So the guy in the main event that drew everybody, he'd get the biggest cut. Now, I don't know how Vince is justifying what he's making now, and that's none of my damn business. But I can tell you this, it doesn't look to me, if you're making almost $1 billion, that the boys aren't getting a big enough cut.
Yeah.
If they were getting a big enough cut, then healthcare wouldn't be an issue.
No, well, and that's you bring up they're not getting a cut. I remember one of the gripes Phil Brooks, CM Punk had was when they switched to the network and where we getting our cut of the pay-per-view buys and all that stuff. That is something wrestling fans know about. And one of the reasons I have you on here is Jon Oliver, likes to end every episode with his fans or with whoever watches the show doing something, whether it's making a hashtag war or whatever. And so basically he asked his fandom to make signs at WrestleMania, which you told us before we went live that they could take up the signs. Sure. So that explains the lack of signs probably at WrestleMania. But he also told them to do chants. So the whole week, just the wrestling world, as you know, you were a part of it, the wrestling world's buzzing, like what's going to happen, because now you got non-wrestling fans involved and stuff. So Bret Hart gets attacked. That's the first thing that happens at the Hall of Fame. How do you feel about that? Has it ever happened to you? Has it ever happened to you where a fan has attacked you while you're just doing your job?
I've had, usually at smaller shows
or
shows that, that's kind of stuff usually happen when you were doing a show really close to a college.
Yeah. Okay.
Because there was, there's usually drinking involved, and there's
Young
usually
kids.
a bunch of, 20-somethings like busting somebody's balls, and somebody says, I'm going to jump in the ring. And the rest of the the rest of his friends are giving him shit until he does it. And we've had shows, we used to do regular shows, XCW up in Denton. And so every week, on top of that, the arena was BYOB.
Oh, Jesus.
And so, they were just coming in watching a wrestling show and pre-partying to go out and party that night.
Yeah.
And we had, large shows that we would do every few months. And, of course, eventually one of them, threw a mask on, and a thong, and tried to jump in the ring. And at that particular time, the wrestlers just backed off, and the referees beat the shit out of him. But
yeah, pretty much everybody, WWE cut away, but after some fan video exposed on YouTube, they beat the crap out of this dude for 4 or 5 minutes because he tackled Bret Hart while Bret Hart was talking about...
See, I've not seen it.
Oh, you have not seen this?
I have not seen it.
So I'll describe it to you like a wrestling fan would describe it to another wrestling fan. Bro, all right. So, like, Bret Hart's there with Natty, right? Bret Hart's there with Natty, and they've been talking for like a good 10 minutes on the Hart Foundation, right? And they're talking about Anvil. And right when they're talking about Anvil, he just passed this white dude with a reggae top with dreadlocks, fake dreadlocks, grabs Bret by the waist and flings him around.
No shit.
Natty grabs Bret trying to save him. She ends up flinging around. WWE cuts it when Bret goes, and his waist gets grabbed. The fan video shows basically Ronda Rousey's husband hits the ring first and just starts wailing on this guy. Everybody if you can make out in the video, just pretty much everybody in the business friggin' just gets in the ring and just starts pounding him.
I'll have to look that
while
up,
the
man.
crowd
I
is
wonder if it's on
chanting
YouTube.
asshole, beat his ass.
Holy
and Dash Wilder, I believe his name, from the Revival, he's the one getting big Twitter praise because they just literally show him walk up, hit the dude in the head, and then go back to his seat. It's hilarious. But that was Saturday. So that's what happened. So bad on the fan base. Sunday happens. And I mentioned to you what had happened before the show, and you were like, oh, Vince used that trick.
Sure.
I told you I don't think the wrestling fans paid any attention because the WrestleMania was so good because everything happened the way that the fans wanted it to. And when I told Khris this, he went, oh, Vince did that old trick. So explain.
All right, so the old gimmick was, you set up so many matches to a big show. It might be a big... I can only tell you what happened when I was never at WrestleMania. I've not been at SummerSlam. I've not been at any of those huge shows.
But the mentality of putting on a big show.
It's the exact same. It
It's
doesn't
the
matter
exact same thing.
how big the show is.
It's like a comedy show. I use the same
Exactly.
things from a comedy club to a bar venue.
You're trying to set up things to get fans to come and see the show.
Yeah.
And so you're setting up angles, and there's gonna be small angles for the beginning of the show, and big angles they increase and get bigger and bigger and bigger until you got the main event. And so when you run a show, in the old days, when you ran a show like that, at a big show, 99% of the time, you were just, the fans came because they were finally going to get to see what they really wanted to see. The heel getting his comeuppance. And they knew they were going to walk away happy because 99% of the time, the baby faces were they're all going to win at the big show.
Did you ever think watching Jon Olivers' video that fans were actually going to make signs or fans were actually going to chant? I had this hope that they would, but I'm a wrestling fan, and when Jon Olivers' video came out, it was stuff I already knew. I kind of felt bad for never saying anything, making a big fuss about it. Because all we want as wrestling fans is to see our favorite guy with the belt. Nothing else matters. And I think that's the situation here. But you watched that and you didn't at least have a little bit of a thought like, oh, what if the fans turn on Vince?
Maybe a little.
Yeah.
But let's just be honest here. I don't watch the current product.
And if I were you, I wouldn't either. It's like I don't watch current stand-up.
It's not what I fell in love with.
Yeah.
And
Could you elaborate on that, like the difference between what you were in love with to what it is now? Unless
I can only give you my opinion.
yeah, not fact, just straight opinion.
So,
Nothing wrong with that.
Of course, when I became a really huge wrestling fan, I was in my teens.
Yeah.
And nobody, and kayfabe was still real strong, man.
Kayfabe, for those of you who don't know, is when a wrestler is in character outside of the actual venue. So if he's out at a restaurant, like if Hulk Hogan was out in the restaurant, he would still be acting like Hulk Hogan in front of children, in front of anybody. That's a...
Okay, so really, let me give you the inside of what kayfabe really is.
I was just giving a simple
No,
definition.
that's fine. So kayfabe is basically living your gimmick.
Living a gimmick. That's actually a better way of putting it.
The best you possibly can. And that means inside the ring, outside the ring. That doesn't mean that you're not going to socialize with you may be in a huge feud with somebody, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to socialize with them, because you have to have a relationship with that person to make sure that the show's going to be good. You got to trust that person. The worst angles you could possibly put together with two guys that don't really like each other.
Yeah.
Because you never really know what's going to happen, and it's hard to control. But kayfabe is just basically trying to keep the people who buy tickets, which we used to call them marks. They're really not marks anymore.
Yeah.
They're a huge fan base. And Mark comes from the old Carney, term that when they were doing the games or whatever it was, that's what they were. They were marks, like a con man would use.
Yeah.
And because you wanted to keep it real, and you wanted people to believe it. And if you didn't, when I got in the business, people believed that shit.
Oh yeah.
Hey guys, Dan here. Just telling you that this is the first of two-part episode of Crowd's Fault. Part 2 is, of course, next on the playlist. We'd like to thank Chris Germany one more time for doing this episode titled Sick Bump with us. Part 2 has even more stories, so just stick around. Part 2 should automatically play. If it doesn't, just click there. And also, don't forget to subscribe to Red Nebula Pictures for more episodes of Crowd's Fault and more episodes of Nerd Alert. See ya at Part 2, guys. Part 2 of Sick Bump with Chris Germany. Coming up next.